I'm going to do this. I'm going to placate whoever those voters are in Ohio who want compromise and mythical ones, I would argue. He does that. And so then we're left with this idea of filibuster reform. How willing is it in your mind, and how much power does Joe Biden have to say, A, to Chuck Schumer, hey, look, this is pretty clear what we need here, and you're facing maybe a primary, so you have extra motivation to maybe do this, but and I'm going to call Joe Manchin. And like, how much influence does Joe Biden have with Joe Manchin, or how much is it Joe Biden saying, like, Joe Manchin's there, I can't do anything, and so I'm going to have to give away the store to Mitch McConnell?
So Joe Biden has an enormous amount of power here, and in some ways a unique amount of power, unique to him, because he has credibility on this issue with someone like Manchin, and look, I look at this from the perspective of whipping votes, which we had to do a lot in the leader's office. And, I get that Manchin is firmly opposed. He's been very clear about that. But, what you're talking about is a whip list of about, 3 to 5 senators. So to me, I look at that and say, that's not a bad place to start. You're not talking about a whip list of 15 to 20 people. So, you can really focus your efforts on the people that you need to persuade. And Joe Biden, with his history of the Senate, everybody knowing that this guy is about as deep as an institutionalist as they come, if he decides that reform is necessary, he is going to have unique credibility to go to someone like Joe Manchin and say, Joe, listen, you know me. I've tried everything. There is no other option here. We have to do reform. And I think that, combined with other, Manchin's issues, I think he's caught up in ideas of Senate history and reform that I think are incorrect. So I think, helping explain the true origins of the filibuster, the fact that this was not the way it was supposed to be, you combine those kinds of appeals with Joe Biden's unique credibility and persuasion, and I think you see a clear path to getting around a yes. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen right away. But if you only have a few senators standing in the way, I think that someone like Joe Biden is going to be able to persuade them if he chooses that that's what he wants to do.
Okay, so Joe Biden has this sort of like Nixon to China ability to talk to a Joe Manchin. When Joe Manchin says no to $2,000 checks, and then he did a quick 180 on that, good for him. But when he says no filibuster, is he doing that? Is it your sense that he's doing that because I'm a deep institutionalist and this is hallowed ground and I don't want to change the filibuster? Or is he doing that because this is going to mean that maybe some bills get pushed through that aren't necessarily comport with what my donors and my sort of class of people want. And I want that filibuster so that we can't go too far.
Yeah, I think
center of the debate as well.
Right. I mean, that's the thing is the irony of this is that if you got rid of the filibuster and enable the Senate to pass things at a majority vote, Joe Manchin will be the most powerful senator in the Senate because you can't get anything passed unless you have his vote. I think that that was not necessarily the case when it was possible that Democrats would control more than 50 seats. But I think now that things have settled where they are and you've got a direct 50-50 split with Vice President Harris breaking the tie, Joe Manchin is empowered by this kind of reform. He can be the deal maker he wants. He can make sure that bills that he's uncomfortable with don't pass. I'm not thrilled about that prospect as a liberal myself, but simply from an analysis of the power dynamics here, a majority rule Senate would put Joe Manchin in the catbird seat and enable him to be a total kingmaker on virtually everything that came to the floor. So I think those are the kind of appeals that over time will hopefully get him to yes.
So if I understand what you're saying is when Joe Manchin said months ago, I would be against the filibuster, he was not contemplating the notion of like, wait a second, I'm vote number 50 and I am literally the fulcrum of the Senate. And therefore, I can get the Joe Manchin Stadium in West Virginia is going to look really good.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's ways to get senators to yes. There's a lot more to his legacy than, filibuster opposition. The other thing is, the road to reform is paved with senators being on both sides of this issue. I mean, Harry Reid said he would never go nuclear. Chuck Schumer, this is part of it's almost a rite of passage for senators to be on both sides of the issue. McConnell pushed to go nuclear and to deploy the filibuster reform when he was the second ranking member of the Republican Senate in 2005, when the Bush administration was making a hard push to deploy filibuster reform. So basically everybody's been on both sides of the issue. I hear what he's saying, but I don't see that as an insurmountable obstacle.
Okay, so lastly, let me ask you this. This notion, and we touched on it briefly, but this notion of the particularly this generation of Democrats that maintain the leadership in this party, their perception of who they must placate, or whose judgment they must be in proper favor. The Beltway media, folks don't remember around here, but David Broder, that type of animal in Washington, that is, and I say David Broder, and people don't necessarily know who I'm talking about in this room, but that's indicative of maybe this is an era that is over. How much of a generational divide do you see within the context of the Senate, within the Democratic Party, about this particular notion of them having to address, I don't know, that we'd say the Chuck Todds, the Ledley Stalls, the Stephanopoulos, or whoever it is?
You have an entire generation of lawmakers coming up who've never spent a Sunday watching the Sunday shows, and that's not, due to their lack of engagement. They're incredibly engaged and informed, but the Sunday shows just don't set the agenda the way they used to. You have a huge generational divide here. And you look, Biden won the nomination. He won the election. But I think that's sort of papering over the fact that the rising generation of progressive lawmakers, they represent the future. This is an inexorable march of demographics, and they are the people who are going to take the lead in the next iteration of the party. So it is incredibly important with these reform conversations for everybody to know that they have an enormous amount of leverage here. Lawmakers have to listen to them, and they should make their voices clear.
Adam Jentleson, the book is Kill Switch, The Rise of the Modern Senate and the Crippling of American Democracy. It's a fascinating read. I think it's incredibly important, particularly with a 50-50 Senate. I mean, these issues are going to have such an implication for people's lives on a just a material basis. Very important. Thanks so much for coming on. I would love to have you back to talk more as we see how this is going to plays out over the next month or two, actually.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to wrap some stuff up. We are back. I want to apologize for some of the audio problems we were having during that segment. It is people go through this every day now in their daily lives. A lot of people do anyways, in terms of like school meetings or work meetings with Zoom and whatnot.
We've democratized the audio issue process.
That is right. That's right. All right, let's play this one clip. I mean, there is a lot of people who are feeling some regret, some of which is crocodile tears. And this is the important thing. I mean, let me just reiterate a couple of things that we heard with Adam Jentleson before we play this clip of Ken Langone. Mitch McConnell is sending up a trial balloon. One way or another, he's going to work in the best interest of the Republicans. That does not necessarily mean that just because he does A, that Democrats should do B. But just be aware that dynamic is going on. Also, be aware that Joe Biden has a choice. He has a choice. He can try getting what he needs to get and have it a bipartisan bill, but if that doesn't work, he has a choice. Does he water it down, or does he push for filibuster reform? You just heard a guy whose job it was to whip senators, literally whip, but get them to vote in a certain way. And he perceives this as not an insurmountable hill by any stretch of the imagination. He perceives Joe Biden uniquely well positioned to convince a Joe Manchin that we need filibuster reform. So understand, our politicians are making choices. How you respond to these things. And it's not to say that we all know who Joe Biden is. But we also know that people have a certain margin of potential in certain areas as politicians, and they are influenced by what their constituents say. And so you have to write them off. Pressure, sometimes you walk a tightrope with this type of pressure. But just be aware of these choices that our politicians are made. And I will also say that doesn't go just for politicians. It also goes for the billionaire class and the multimillionaire class who fund these political parties. For instance, Ken Langone. You know him maybe as a big financial supporter of Andrew Cuomo's, a big supporter of charter schools. In fact, almost single-handedly responsible for Andrew Cuomo's push for charters in this state. Well, he also was a big contributor to Donald Trump. Here he is talking to Andrew Ross Sorkin on CNBC.
My question to you is, what is your feeling about this today? And as I've asked others, including Mick Mulvaney, as somebody who supported this, do you feel like you enabled it to some degree?
I feel betrayed, okay? Going through the court system to try and get some results, he exhausted everything. It was over. Biden's the president. Biden should be in the White House. And I'll give you a very simple thing, Andrew. I think the biggest mistake anybody can make is to offer mitigating reasons why what happened last Wednesday was a disgrace and should never have happened in this country. And if it doesn't break every American's heart, something's wrong. It breaks my heart. For sure, I didn't sign up for that. And more importantly, I think right now all of us have one, to me, I'm speaking for myself, I'm going to do everything I can from day one to make sure I do my part to make Joe Biden the most successful president in the history of the country. And there's a selfish reason for that. We've got very serious, major issues in America to deal with. We've got the pandemic. We've got the debt. We've got infrastructure. We have a horrendous condition of public schools in America. We have generational theft. What the hell is a guy like me doing getting money from the government every month?
Okay.
Right.
Well, we can rest easy knowing that Ken Langone, the man whose greed has warped him to the point where he's so removed from the consequences of his political donations that he doesn't think that he's in any way responsible for enabling a guy like Trump, which created that yesterday.
Of course. That's like I bought a ticket for the roller coaster, but I only got it for the parts that went up, not down. But let me just go through quickly the list he's talking about. When he says public education, he's talking about he wants to push charters. When he's talking about debt, he wants to cut Social Security. He said it right there. Why am I getting a government check every month? I'll tell you why. Because it's much easier for the government, much less costly for the government to give everybody a Social Security check and take it back in your taxes. If you want means testing for Social Security, we take more back in taxes. He knows this. This is a guy who's making a pivot. Understand what you're seeing in this moment, folks. There's a lot of people who are going to be jumping off a sinking ship, and they're going to make it like they're doing so willingly, not because they're afraid of getting sucked down to the bottom of the ocean. Be very, very skeptical. We will see you tomorrow. And for those of you sticking around, we will see you right now.
We are seeing you. Yeah.
We see you. We see you.
We actually are looking at all of you. We have that technology here.
We didn't want to reveal that.
Right. Well,
we didn't want to say
because it makes us look
like peeping Toms,
like sellouts or hypocrites.
Peeping Toms. I would say a little bit like that. Folks, we got a lot to cover. I don't know where we are, Madam. Madam Speaker. Where are we in terms of the impeachment? Do we know? Brendan? Matt?
Let's see.
Let's take a break.
This is live coverage from the House, so they're still in the House.
All right, we'll figure it out.
We will take a break, head to the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, your support makes this show possible. You can become a member today at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, I wanted to plug these. I have in the past. This is the mask I've been wearing lately. It's an excellent mask. Looks great.
I know. He tried to talk to me with it yesterday on. Can't understand a word he's saying.
It's actually really good. But
it seems good.
Really good with my glasses, too, which is a big issue for me. It's got It's got gauze sewn into
Wow.
it. Yes, and it comes. You can buy very chic looking pouch for it.